So essentially, it's the way that students communicate, right? It's a disability that affects their verbal and nonverbal communication and their social interaction. And it's going to be noticeable generally. However, the problem with taking this definition and blanketing it over autism generally is that there's a huge range in what autism means, because it's become kind of an umbrella term for several different disorders. And so I've got this kind of handy visual that's a little bit helpful in understanding this kind of spectrum that it really is. It's a huge spectrum. On one hand, on the left side, there's high functioning autism. A lot of people refer to this as Asperger's or PDD. And in these cases, it might be really difficult for someone who's not a professional to even notice that the person is struggling with ASD. The person might even have some really extreme ability in some areas. They might be really, really quick thinkers. This is where, like, I think the quote unquote like Rain Man idea comes from in regards to ASD, that they are able to think on a really high level. And that's where you see the next one on the right says that they have above average IQ. They're typically really, really smart. It's all just about the way that people with ASD are able to communicate. It's not that their brain is necessarily functioning any less. It's a lot of the times just that they aren't able to communicate what they're thinking and how they're thinking it to other people. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have what it defines as classic autism. That's over here. And that's where a lot of people are probably a little more familiar with that, where it's a little bit more severe, that you'll notice people that struggle with classic or severe autism, that they'll struggle significantly to communicate, to transition, to problem solve, and just to be understood in general. Sometimes they can't function very well. I have a couple of pictures here, some visual aids that I think might be helpful in understanding ASD. On the left, you have my nephew, Jude, who is currently about 4 years old, and he has what is closer to the classic or severe autism. And he was diagnosed about a year or two ago, so it was before he was 3. And he is a super smart little boy. He has essentially a photographic memory that a lot of times his parents will find him drawing pictures of logos and pictures that he's seen, and they're almost picture perfect, that he remembers really small details that most other people won't remember. On the right, the photo on the right is my friend Will, who is much closer to the other side of the autism spectrum disorder, that he has what he describes as Asperger's, right? And he's able to hold down a full-time job. He was attending college a couple of years ago before he left to go on a mission. He served a 6-month mission close to his home. It was kind of a special assignment mission. And worked in the mission office there. He struggles a little bit to express the things that he's feeling sometimes, and acknowledges that readily. That sometimes he'll have outbursts where all of a sudden the emotions that he didn't realize were kind of getting pent up will escape him a little bit. But for the most part, people that talk to him don't really notice too much that he functions very much different from the way that they do. And so you can kind of see from these two pictures that there's a significant range, that Jude, my nephew on the left, will have a lot to struggle with to communicate. He still doesn't talk to anybody except for through numbers. He loves numbers. and he's going to struggle a lot with his communication throughout his life, but his parents know about his special needs and are able to help him with those. Whereas my friend Will doesn't have quite as many of those, that he's able to function and get away with a little bit less help and assistance. So understanding some characteristics of autism spectrum disorder is really important. Some non-comprehensive characteristics they might have. They might not point at objects to show interest. They might not look at objects when another person points at them. They might have trouble relating to others or not have an interest in other people at all. That's classic Jude, my nephew, that he struggles. He doesn't make eye contact very much unless he knows you really well. And a lot of the time it feels like they're in their own little world, that they are not really connected to the same reality that you are. It's very hard to get their attention or their interest. They might want to be alone or avoid eye contact, have trouble understanding other people's feelings or talking to them about their own feelings. That's something that my friend Will struggles with a little bit. They might prefer not to be held or cuddled, or they might cuddle only when they want to. They might appear to be unaware when people talk to them, but respond to other sounds. They might be very interested in people, but not know how to talk, play, or relate to them. They might repeat or echo words or phrases said to them, or repeat words or phrases in place of normal language. They might have trouble expressing their needs using typical words or motions. They might not play pretend games. They might repeat actions over and over again, have systems that they need to repeat the same things. They might have these systems. They might have trouble adapting when routine changes, and they might have unusual reactions to the way things smell, taste, look, feel, or sound. And they might sometimes lose skills they once had, stop saying words they were using. And a lot of these characteristics, again, are things that a child with ASD might struggle with. Some of these things, as they get older, might become less prominent, but it's a way that they try to diagnose young children. There is no cure for autism spectrum disorder. However, early intervention can help, and that's why the U.S. is making a concerted effort to try to detect ASD early, preferably before they're 3 years old. But you can see from this a picture that we're getting better at detecting this and getting kids the help that they need, that we're able to diagnose it younger and younger so that they're able to have the intervention, the help they need to learn and to be able to function better as they get older. So here's some important classroom strategies for ASD that I'm just kind of going to go through here. Some of them might be helpful, some of them might not. And that's where I think this one right here, learning about the student from the student, is important. That you, as a teacher, take time to get to know the students in your class that may be struggling with ASD and what their needs are. Because again, it's a spectrum. That there are some common characteristics, but it's a spectrum, and so they might need something a little different. However, visual aids and giving step-by-step instruction is really helpful. I have this visual schedule here. That is just an example of what might be helpful for a young person struggling with ASD, that they can see what they're going to be doing next. If I'm doing reading now, that means soon I'm going to be doing math. And if I'm doing math now, soon that means maybe it's time for a bathroom break, and so forth. That because people with ASD often struggle with transitions and struggle with focusing on instructions, having visual instructions can be really, really helpful. People with ASD will often thrive if they have a job that has routine with it, that makes them feel wanted and makes them feel helpful. It's really awful if we just ignore people with ASD, that they shouldn't be ignored. They should be helped and acknowledged and feel like part of the class and part of the group. And one of the best ways you can do that is to give them a job. Maybe they're the person that makes sure the whiteboard is cleaned off after every class, or maybe they're the person that inspects the line and makes sure that the line is that people are forming in line or taking their turns, or hands out the papers, but they have a job that has a routine associated with it. Transitions are a really big deal for people with ASD, that it can be difficult for them to transition, for you to just say suddenly, now we're going to switch from reading and we're going to go straight into math. Now, go, do it. that can be difficult. And so supporting that by giving them notice, by again having that visual, those visual aids, letting them know what's going to happen next. But say in 5 minutes we're going to be switching to this. In 3 minutes we're going to be switching to this. We're doing other things to help that transition feel less jarring for them can be really important. Also, lots of visual modeling can be really helpful for students with ASD, because if they are able to see it done first, that makes it easier for them to do it, and it's not as scary, it's not as difficult if you're able to show them what you want them to do first, or have another student model that first, so before the rest of the class does it, so that that person struggling with ASD can see, because these visual things are often really tangible for them. So those are the things that I learned about ASD. I hope that was helpful. Yeah, I'm excited about learning more. Thanks, everybody. My name is Andrew Smith. I've introduced myself already, but I'm going to be doing a short 10-minute lesson on autism spectrum disorder. But let me see really quick if I can figure out how to get my webcam to stay in here. I don't know if I can while I'm presenting. You have to bear with me. I guess not. I was interested in autism spectrum disorder because it's something that I haven't had a lot of experience with, but I've had enough that I wanted to learn a little bit more.